Yeah. Maybe we should just do the intro and then rant.
Welcome to Madoka Magicast, the podcast devoted to the dark magical girl anime Puella and Magi, Madoka Magica. I am your host Amanda, and I'm joined by my co-hosts Yasha and Vanna, who are the owners of the... Hey, there they are! They are the owners of the biggest revolutionary girl Utena website, Empty Movement. And they've had a bad day today, so we're getting on Discord today to have a big rant about why they hated the first two Madoka movies so much. I'm very interested in hearing this because whenever I watch the first two movies, I'm just kind of like, I'd rather watch the anime, but I guess it's mostly the same thing. But you guys have very strong opinions about these first two movies.
Yes, because they're so badly made. That's the thing, is they're incredibly badly constructed.
There are certain things that really are bad. I guess for me, because I've seen the anime, my brain kind of fills in the gaps.
Yeah,
maybe that's why.
On. That's what the movies depend on.
Which is
they depend on you to fill in the gaps of what's there. Like, they don't give Mami's background at all. So
I know, and when you guys pointed that out to me as an example, I was like, oh my god, you're right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's what is it? It's something like 30 minutes of footage that got cut in total.
The first one?
No, I mean like in total.
Okay.
I think it's, or is it the first one?
I think it's just the first one. I think
for the amount of content that got cut, the things that got cut were essentially like the character moments and the framing of Kyubey and Mami's background, and the scenes with her mother got truncated a lot. And basically,
there was only two scenes with her mom through the whole thing. So that basically broke the legs of. I know you didn't like that scene at the end. I know that didn't hit you or Vanna like the same way. You know, the one where
but you still needed the build up to it.
Yeah, you still needed the build up to it. So it basically broke the legs off that scene entirely. That scene comes out of nowhere. It's depending on you to remember that Madoka had more interactions with her mother.
Yeah.
And fill that in yourself.
I did notice in my rewatch that one of those really key conversations that she has with her mom is completely changed.
Yeah.
Like they're talking about something completely different for no apparent reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of changes. There was this really great Tumblr post that kind of broke it all down. Most of the changes were visual, and, some of it's nice, and some of it just felt so unnecessary. Mm-hmm. And it spent a lot of currency on, like, improving the animation, and some of it's, like, gorgeous. Like, they beefed up, like, some of the pan shots of her and things like that. But the ultimate point of it seemed to be to kind of slightly reframe the show to prepare you for rebellion.
Which we have seen by now.
Seen.
And I should mention now, while we're early, that we recorded about an hour and 15-minute long initial reaction to the movie immediately after the live stream was over. And that is a Patreon exclusive, because it's kind of rough and we didn't have an outline or anything.
Yeah.
And we're all three of us are very drunk.
It was just
screeching.
But if you want to know what we all thought of it, especially Yasha and Vanna, because it was their blind watch, immediately after the live stream, you can become a Patreon to gain access to it. It will never get uploaded to the YouTube or the SoundCloud. So head on over and give us some support if you want to listen to that.
Heck yeah.
And don't forget, if you join the $5 tier, you can get a free pin for it. So you can get...
We got our pins.
Aren't they great?
They're so beautiful.
We do have some left for future patrons, so you can, and if you sign up for either the $10 tier or you stay in for 2 months on the $5 tier, you can get both pins.
And you can hear us rant.
Yes. So today is not our Rebellion episode.
No, this is the lead-in to Rebellion, because Rebellion's probably going to be a lot of ranting too, but in quite
a different way.
Tone.
Yeah, very different.
This is just going to be us shitting on these because they're terrible. They're terrible. They're terrible. Okay, let Let me get my big rant out of the way. Okay,
go
they
ahead.
cut the legs off of every single emotional scene. Kyoko and Sakura doesn't make any sense at all with what's given in the movie. Like, I'm talking, okay, the thing is, if they made the movies for the fans, why did they not put in anything new? Fans can literally spend the extra half hour or whatever to go and watch the show and see something better. Why was this made? Why was this made at all? Why? I don't get it. Because new viewers are going to get the shitty version of Madoka, like where nothing really makes sense and the characters don't really gel and things don't really. There's some visual stuff that's okay or whatever, but it's the terrible version. So why would you want to? That's not for new viewers. Obviously, it depends too much on having seen the show to be able to watch it. But why would you watch these movies if you're one of the older viewers, the one who has
seen the show, which is longer and more fleshed out?
There's no reason. Literally no reason. You can literally spend like an extra hour or so and watch the whole fucking series and get all of the good stuff. Like, who was this made for? Why was it made? Okay, that's my problem. All right, I'll shut up.
Money. I can basically guarantee you that they took the proceeds from these two movies and used it to help fund Rebellion.
That's fair.
But such a transparent money grab. Like, and you know what really pisses me off about this whole thing is that all the little review shits go, oh, they're so good and they tightened it up so much, blah, blah, blah. And it's basically like the same kind of shit as people who are like, oh, the library scenes in Castlevania really dragged it down. Like, fuck you, buddy. Don't you understand how character moments are important and how you have to have quiet scenes to be able to build up your loud scenes, to make your loud scenes important? Like, fuck those guys. Oh, okay. All right.
I mean, I do think there are some scenes that do benefit from some trimming.
Well, yeah.
But
there's always going to be a little fat that needs trimming, but half an hour of it and the entire, like, I'm just talking
especially when you could just take a minute off this fight scene here, take a minute off that fight scene there. Mm-hmm. I feel like there were probably better ways to do that than to cut out entire scenes where the audience receives critical information.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. For an example of something, I'm just gonna an example of something that was good to cut. That whole thing where you mix the ammonia and the bleach.
Oh, yeah.
When you're watching the show, it has, like, an aside where it,
like a little
Madoka's
flashback.
mother explains why you don't do that, blah, 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 blah. That was not necessary.
Yeah.
The audience kind of can tell that bleach and ammonia are going to be a problem if it's a big cult combining them.
Exactly.
So that's a scene that was unnecessary. A scene that was necessary was the fucking dream sequence at the opening.
The very first
frames the entire show.
That basically gives you everything you need to establish Homura as a character at all, and establish why it's important for her to be there.
And they leave, like, Madoka being like, oh, I feel like I saw her in a dream, and
and it's unconnected.
Yeah, you don't
connect
see the dream, you don't see, like,
Sam
it's relying on that you've seen the show in a bad way. Because that entire context is there, but not sure.
It does kind of come out of nowhere when she mentions it in the restaurant.
Yeah.
Like, because you've had this whole scene of her having this awkward moment with Homura. We don't know anything about Homura yet. We don't know anything about her. The impact of her being the same person in the dream is just gone, because we don't get to see the dream.
Yep.
And then Madoka just kind of casually mentions it in dialogue, that she saw this girl in a dream.
And that does not make sense.
Well, the impact is just gone.
It is.
Yeah.
It's totally gone.
Okay, I need a second here because Sam is freaking out.
Aww.
So he's like, yeah, I didn't like this either. Yeah. Oh, he's grounded. He's getting grounded. I think, like, structurally, just, like, broadly speaking, the big problem I had with the two movies is, one, they did remove a lot of character context. They pared down the sub-characters, like, dramatically. Like, Mami is gone, basically.
Yeah.
They cut a lot of Kyoko's content, and what they leave of Sayaka, like, for example, there's more, Sayaka's face in shadow kind of shots. Like, they emphasize the fact that she's gonna fall, like, earlier. Homura is reframed as much more emotionally fragile.
She's reframed to be, like, psychotic.
Kind of,
yeah.
Like, they basically, the way they position her in this ends up making her into one of those characters who's like, I'm on the edge and I'm gonna break any second.
Yeah. And
she ends up being a lot harder to relate to and a lot less sympathetic.
Yes,
definitely.
They frame her much more as a villain.
They frame her much more as someone who's going to lose their goddamn mind. And they also reframe Kyubey. Like, one of the, like, I constantly was going off because I wanted to fuck Kyubey.
Yeah, really?
In the show. No, but I loved how they framed Kyubey as, like, scary and creepy.
Yes.
Like, having him in shadow and, like, all these little weird details that made it seem like Kyubey was fucking terrifying. That was all cut, and Kyubey is reframed as much more actually just, you know, a rational actor.
He's presented as a rational actor, which is really odd.
Because there is so much subtle content in the show that frames him as actually sadistic, and I liked that.
Yeah.
Because it conflicted with his own worldview, and he's like,
we don't have emotions,
and I'm
they're
like,
a disease.
Fucking bullshit, Spock.
Yeah, and like, what I like, and this is maybe some of my personal values leaking into my interpretation of the show here, but what I like about the show is that it is kind of a rejection of, well, emotions are bad, you should only be using facts and logic at all times. Because, like I mentioned in a previous episode, I would say most, if not all, probably all, you guys would probably tell me all, of the people who say that kind of thing, they're really just saying, my emotions are logical and your emotions are not logical. That's really what they mean when they say
like
that.
100% of the time that's what's going on, is considering their point of view. Like, actually, this is something that I run into talking with my brother a lot. He's very, very much one of those people.
And basically any libertarian.
My brother's not a libertarian. He's actually a leftist, believe it or not.
Kyubey is a libertarian.
Kyubey is a libertarian. But it's still, like, we had a conversation about Black Panther, and he was like, I don't understand why everybody sees this movie as good. I'm like, dude, step out of yourself for a second, and maybe try and empathize with people who have not seen Marvel.
That movie is just a good movie too, but on top of that, like, it was he saying, like, why is it a big deal? Because that's really easy.
What he was saying was like, it's okay, but I don't understand why everybody is making such a huge fuss about it. It's not that good.
Well, like, and that's like the perspective Kyubey has in the show, and they remove that in the movie, and I get why. Now that I'm actually kind of glad we saw Rebellion before we recorded this, because now I understand what they were going for, though they failed miserably. This is reframing the characters so that Rebellion makes more sense. Unfortunately, that reframing, I don't think really benefited anybody.
No.
And I don't think it was necessary. Like,
no.
Yeah.
I think Rebellion, you can perfectly read Rebellion from the show if you want to, although I don't think most people like that reading.
With that, but it's something that you can do if you want to.
These movies were basically like,
I heard a bark!
I heard a bark!
Bark. I heard a bark. Did she bark?
Yes.
She talked.
Yes. Luna!
We have
Luna, where are you? What you doing, Luna? Luna's looking at me. Come here, baby.
Oh,
you want attention?
They are easily distracted by small animals.
Well, yeah.
Kyubey would win.
When I want her to come over to me, she just kind of stares at me and backs away.
That's
That's more a cat thing than a dog thing, so she'll probably grow out of it.
I want to give you love. I want to give you love. Come here. She's just looking at me. She's sitting on my bed behind my desk right now.
There's a reframing of the main characters in service of Rebellion. And from what I understand, Urobuchi did not want to have a sequel. Like, he did set the show up to be final, and of course, you know, money/demand/money/demand led to this. And it does feel like, even if I could enjoy the reading of Rebellion, like, this was tacked on and forced in a way that I don't think the show wanted. So they had these movies, They reframe it, but I don't think they reframe it in a positive way, because a lot of the things that I liked about the show get changed, and like for example, the Homura becoming more unstable.
Yeah.
Like they felt like they needed
basically
to
make
have
her weaker.
Yeah. They felt like they had to make her weaker and more vulnerable and less stable to justify what happens in Rebellion, and I'm like, but no.
Yeah, but you didn't need that.
Have to.
All you really had to do was give us the backstory to Rebellion.
Yeah.
Which we don't get.
Which we do not get.
Yeah.
You didn't need to reframe Kyubey as less sadistic.
Yeah.
Because we understood that in the alternate timeline he wasn't like that. Like, that kind of stuff is like, the movies presume the audience is dumb. I think that's the problem.
There's that.
The movies change things so that someone can read the Rebellion movie more easily, and I think it's completely unnecessary, because if you're thinking about this at all, you didn't need the first two movies. They were completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
There are some things in it that are great, like they kind of beefed up the witch labyrinths and visual effects and stuff like that. And they're beautiful. Like, it is at times beautiful, but at other times it's so extra and unnecessary. Like, for example, the scene with the fountain, with Kyubey and Madoka are talking, and there's like that
you
fountain.
remember it's just before Homura shoots Kyubey to pieces and he eats his own corpse.
Yes.
It's
that
scene.
scene.
Just before that, the fountain's there. And
so, in the original, you have a lot of close-up shots of Kyubey and Madoka, and the fountains are in the background, and it's very visually, like, it's great. Then, in the movies, they basically take that entire shot and have it like a really far away shot with these, like, super, super extra fountains that are all visually, like, woo!
Like, they're there. They pull away to that shot.
Would you say that it's a bit like the Star Wars prequels adding unnecessary CGI alien animals?
It's exactly that. Like, you didn't need to fill the frame more. You had it fine. And in my opinion, anytime you're going to choose a far removed shot over a close-up, is you prioritizing one thing over the development of the characters.
You're prioritizing the sparkle.
You're giving
over
context to the setting when you do that.
Yeah, but you're also doing it at the cost of the character development, and that was such an important scene. That's also the scene where they changed the frame of Kyubey.
Oh my god.
You guys sent this to me. I'm going to need you guys to send this again to me so I can include it in the video. Yes. But it is a remarkably bad redrawing of Kyubey that did not need to happen.
It did not need to happen. And, like, if you listen to the podcast when that episode happened, that's when I, like, lost my shit and was like, oh my god, I think he's an alien, Like, it was a very clear suggestion of how to read Kyubey, and they changed it, and when they redrew it, and Kyubey looks, like, even worse. Like, he looks
terrible.
Weird. He looks fucking weird. They forgot the dots on his ear, but most importantly, they changed
his face
his
looks
expression.
super weird.
There.
I put them up. They're there.
Okay. They
changed his expression to make him look less
menacing
and
less smug.
Yeah. And it's like, thanks, I hate it, because there were so many key shots in that scene especially that I felt were relevant, and they changed a lot of them to make them more sparkly and add aliens like they did in the prequels. Like, it was just very, what did you do all of this for?
There's literally in every way, this redraw looks worse.
Yes. Like, why would you do this?
The shading looks worse. The drawing looks worse.
The perspective
looks worse.
My problem with this entire, like, this comparison between the two shots, I hope you'll put this on the video so that people can see. The first one, the one from the series, is drawn in such a way that you can tell that you're looking at Kyubey up from underneath. Like, the perspective on it is good. Mm-hmm. They've got
it looks awkward, but it's supposed to, because it's a forced perspective.
Yeah, it's a forced perspective. So Kyubey doesn't look the way he normally would. In the second one, they draw Kyubey as if that forced perspective is not there, even though your camera angle is still coming from below him. So his face looks normal, as if you were looking at him head on, even though your perspective
you're not.
For the rest of the shot is looking up at him.
In the original, that first picture, that's the pathetic shot. No, like, I don't even need to explain it. That's the shot that's in every anime where someone is, like, pathetic.
Yeah.
Literally. That's the pathetic shot, and Kyubey has a couple of those.
Yes.
And he never says pathetic, but it's always framed
But that's implied by the shot.
And that's where you get kind of the sense that he's not entirely without emotions and kind of maybe sadistic.
Mm-hmm.
They changed the perspective and they changed the framing and they changed his expression to make it not the pathetic shot. And I hate it because I loved the pathetic shot.
Yeah. Like, they made
that
it...
stuff is important.
They made Kyubey very neutral
in
the movies. Like, they took away any kind of, like, commentary, like, visual commentary on him.
Yeah.
Because the visual commentary on Kyubey in the series was very fucking strong. Like, you could see from the very first episode that he was not somebody these girls should really be trusting, that he was going to fuck them and fool with them and basically lead them into, well, what they did. What they did. Faustian bargain that they didn't really understand. And the visual commentary on Kyubey was always things like he's in shadows, or you're seeing him in the pathetic shot where it's up from underneath. And for the baseline, they have him as the cute magical girl mascot. But then you get all of these shots that tell you that maybe he's something more. Like
the visual messaging conflicts with the text.
They fucked with they fucked with the way Sayaka became a magical
I was going to bring that up. They changed Sayaka's
so
magical
much.
sequence.
Well, hold on. We're skipping ahead.
Okay, we're skipping ahead.
Okay, we're still back. We're still mostly back in the original episode because there's a part I would like to talk about now, which is the tittification of Mommy.
Oh my god!
Like, okay, in her original character design, she is kind of busty, but the show never really goes out of the way to emphasize it, and she doesn't have boob socks.
Yeah.
So listeners who do not know what I mean by boob socks are like in superhero uniforms where each titty is completely visible in a spandex costume. It has its own compartment.
It's got its own compartment. The garment is made so that there are individual compartments for each titty.
When real women wear actual t-shirts, that is not how our breasts look in the clothing.
No, absolutely not. Like, you would have to, like, make an effort to do that.
Yeah, so it's subtle if you're maybe a man and you're not sensitive to human anatomy or I don't know exactly. Like, you're not I'm an artist, so I notice shit like that when it's off. It's subtle, but it's like a very obvious thing when you know when it sticks out to you in the way that it sticks out to me. And it's one of my biggest problems with all of the post-anime content for Madoka.
Well,
they gave Mommy boob socks.
They give Mommy boob socks and then remove all of the content that makes her actually a relevant character.
So
she's literally
she's like some bimbo.
That
just gets her head bit off. Like, that's literally
she's there to die.
Yeah, that's literally her role in the entire thing.
Like, when they remove the line, because, like, when she, like, goes to fight Charlotte, and she's all like, my body feels so light, and then there's something about, I can't remember the rest of the line, but they removed the part where she says, I feel so light, and just left the rest, and I felt it was really, really, like, that's an important line, that why would you take that out? Why would you take that out?
You know, to save 5 seconds.
Yeah, you maybe saved like 3 seconds.
So we would estimate that there's about half an hour cut from these two movies.
Yeah.
Just make each movie 15 minutes longer.
Yeah.
Boom.
Why would you half an hour was cut from the first movie. There's more, I think.
Yeah.
Actually, I think the second movie didn't really have any cuts because it was basically just the last 4 episodes.
Yeah.
So it didn't really have much. That one was not really cut, but the first one had a half hour cut.
This first one, almost acts like it's an apology for how slow the first half of the show is.
That's bullshit.
And
again,
we were like, no, there's nothing slow about it. It's perfect. We kept saying it was tight. It was...
Again, it's like, and again, this comes back to my brother because he and I had this conversation about Castlevania where he was saying, why did they have all of those slow scenes in the library? Like, it really slowed the action down. I'm like, the action depends on those slow scenes.
It's like hard rock songs. Like, you take a song like Nirvana's Smells Like Teen Spirit, and the quiet parts of that song
are the
help to emphasize the harder parts of it.
Exactly.
You can't just have
and
all...
That's how that works.
Yeah.
If you don't care about Mommy because you don't know what's going on in her head, you have no reason to grieve when she dies.
Yeah, no reason to empathize with
At that point, you're only empathizing with Madoka, who thinks this is terrible, but you don't understand why. And I get that is literally them trying to make you be Madoka, like put you in Madoka's shoes, but it does not work.
No.
It sucks.
Well, also
you don't get the like car crash thing, so you never find out what Mommy
what Mommy's motivation was, or why she's alone in her apartment,
or why she feels it's so important for her to have someone now and not be alone.
Her entire motivation.
We don't get anything
because we never receive Mommy's backstory for her wish, do we?
I want to read my notes on this because I freaked out about this. So, it starts with sigh. This mommy is so one-dimensional. And then the next note is, literally, this mommy only exists to fight witches and be a magical girl. We have no reason to believe she has any emotions about anything else. So everything she says in the sequence of Madoka talking about becoming a magical girl rings super false. Next note is, will you really stay with me? Comes out of fucking nowhere, to be honest, and disappears like 2 seconds later. It feels really false and off. We don't know anything about mommy, and have never been given a sense of her isolation at all. And then it just goes off the rails.
She just got to go off.
Oh my god, this is a ranty rant.
Yeah. Yeah, and then it goes, there is so much less weight to this movie. None of this shit matters, and I have a hard time watching it because it doesn't fucking mean anything or do anything. I do not care about these characters. None of their underlying emotions are explored. They're the most fucking surface level read of what happened in the show, and half of this shit's emotional weight depends on you having seen the show. Who the fuck was this made for, and why was it done? What the actual fuck? Like, okay. I do not care. They took out everything that made me care, and then the next note is, it's okay. I'm okay.
Okay. That whole rant, like, basically, this is, and I feel like, Urobuchi maybe had a similar arc to Ano about this, because they keep wanting to compare it to Evangelion, which also had a series, and then a bunch of, like, recaps and reframings and rebuilds surrounding, like, fixing the series that I didn't need fixing. I feel the same way about Madoka. Like, this is them fixing something that was never wrong. You should have left it alone.
It was even more never wrong than Eva was, because at least the ending of Eva was controversial at the time.
Yeah.
There was nothing controversial about the ending of the show at the time it was finished.
And what they change, and in both cases, what they change is so cynical because, and Ano does this much more, like, you know, angry, but I think Urobuchi had the same perspective where you get souped up henshin sequences. Mm-hmm. Like, the transformation sequences are more elaborate, the pan shots are more elaborate, there's more George Lucas retconning kind of shit in it.
Yeah.
It's very cynical, and it's very like, oh, this is what you wanted. You wanted magical girl henshin sequence, not context that made it interesting. There's, like, a cynical, like, anger in this that I kind of sense, like...
I didn't not want a cool magical girl henshin sequence, but it shouldn't come at the expense of critical information.
Yeah. You lose critical information, and you lose critical content that made this show unique.
Okay, so I'm hereby giving you, Vanna, and everybody who hears this permission to look down on everybody who thinks the movies are good because they're dumb shit. Yeah, I'm just saying. Everybody here now has permission, officially granted by me, Yasha. You can send anybody with any complaints to me, and I'll flame the shit out of them.
Okay. I would like to reiterate, as another host of the show, that if you think these movies are okay, we still love you for listening to our podcast, even though we might strongly believe that you're wrong.
Even though you have wrong opinions. Anyway, so we lose the dream sequence, we get souped up mommy, and we get this new opening sequence that I guess is cute.
I mean, it's okay.
Which also, by the way, is completely unnecessary.
It's totally unnecessary.
Why not have the dream sequence be the opening sequence?
Yeah. You know what it is?
Like, it doesn't make any sense.
But instead of having the dream sequence, you replaced it with this, like, musical opening sequence that focuses heavily on Madoka and Homer's relationship. Yeah. And then a bunch of, like, Madoka growing up and shit nobody cares. Like, who cares? Who fucking cares?
Well, I mean,
you know what it is?
If this was a better movie, that would be good.
The opening, that sequence where you're seeing Madoka as a baby and as a toddler and growing up, that is a guilt trip because you know what happens to her later.
Right.
It's reframing the fact that she becomes a goddess as something more sad and unfortunate.
Which is why I'm saying in a better movie, that would be a good move.
But it did not work.
it did not work in this movie because it's blatantly a guilt trip, and it's blatantly just trying to manipulate you into being like, oh no, she's going to be destroyed
I've seen
later.
Madoka as a baby.
Yeah.
Oh no, she's going to disappear from the world.
Yeah.
It's trying to reframe her becoming a goddess as something more depressing and dark. And they did that at the cost of the opening dream sequence that to me was like, that's the entire framing of the show.
That's pivotal.
You know what
Yeah.
that's like? Okay. That would be like if you took the Prince story out of Utena.
Yeah.
Entirely.
Yeah.
The little like flashback thing. If you removed
The
that,
thing at
that
the
would
beginning, of like half the episodes that explains
little girl who bears up under such sorrow.
If you took that out, that would be the same thing. Like you need that.
It's pivotal. That's the axis on which most of this shit turns. You can't take it out.
That's the critical information that tells you, like, it doesn't tell you the first time you see it, but the dream sequence is the critical information that Homura and Madoka have a relationship
that goes
that
beyond
what you see in the show.
Yeah, that they already know this Kyubey thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that Madoka has some reason to care about Homura.
Yes.
And the fact that Madoka has some reason to care about Homura is necessary when, in the same episode, it's contrasted with how cold she is.
Yeah.
Because without that, then she's just being cold and weird.
Yeah, exactly. And they focus on that. And then they take a lot of the things about Homura that would imply... Okay, so the content, I feel like what they changed with Homura, aside from making her more emotionally vulnerable, they removed things that provide a context where you could look back and say, oh, it's because Homura's lived so long. Like, they removed the sequence of her being, like, super good at sports.
Yes.
Yeah.
So then later
when you see her sucking at sports,
there's
like,
nothing
okay, so
to attach it to.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean anything or matter because it's not reflecting back on anything.
Right.
Because when you see the flashback, which they did leave, of her sucking at sports, you see that and you remember that she kicked ass at sports in the beginning, and you begin to put together that there's something
this is different.
Like,
something happened.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is a different Homura than the Homura we've seen so far.
Yeah. So it doesn't fucking matter.
It makes Homura weaker.
Okay.
As a character. There's a change in the framing that I don't think really...
It doesn't serve the movie.
The little openings, like, it's things like this cute opening sequence that's kind of like, Yuri bait a little bit. It's like, okay, fine, sure.
Well, I think I wrote this in my notes. They toned down the lesbaiting elsewhere.
They did. They removed, because, like, remember, like, in the beginning of the show, we kept commenting on there was, like, a lot of, like, subtle, like, sexual pandering and stuff.
Right.
Like, a lot of that is preserved in the movies.
Mm-hmm.
And
no, they took that out.
But a lot of the sexual pandering elsewhere, like the tentacles crawling up Mommy's
thigh.
They
left that. That was great. Thanks.
Yeah.
I hate it.
It takes on a very different tone and becomes much more serious, like much more, because the show did it as that's the hook that's gonna drag these people into caring for these girls.
Right.
But the movies just do it as, like, here's a display.
Yeah, like, the show is very sneaky about it, and then the movies just play it, for lack of a better word, straight. Yeah.
They played it straight.
Which, I mean, that's such a dumb way to put it, but...
Or gay, but...
Yeah. But they did leave a lot of the extra stuff.
Are you starting to see my issue with the post-anime version of this franchise?
Yes.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
I did not need boob sock mommy. I still hate the guns coming out from under her skirt. I still hate the fucking tentacles. They did add the gun coming out of her chest.
Which was cool.
It was like,
is that an Utena reference? There's that meme.
Is that a motherfucking Utena reference?
Plaster that on the YouTube video. There's that meme. Is that an Utena reference?
I think it is. Yeah. I think it is. Which,
probably.
Why wouldn't it be? That's thing
it is
they would have seen. I wish I had been able to see these movies without having seen the show.
Yeah.
Because I'd be curious to know, like, can you follow this at all without the show? Does this have any emotional impact without the show? Because nobody I know that's seen the movies, because, like, I looked around for takes and stuff like that, but nobody sees the movies first. They've all seen the show, so they already know the context.
Mm-hmm. If you're listening to this podcast right now, and you saw these two movies first instead of seeing the anime first, send us an email or a tweet to let us know your opinion.
We want to talk to you.
Yeah, we would want to know. We want to know what you think about it, because but because 2/3 of us, potentially all 3 of us, think these movies are bad, and we want to know if you thought they were bad. Well, as someone who had never seen the series.
I think, and I'm just kind of extrapolating here, but I think people who see the movies are basically going to go, yeah, that was okay. Because there's enough there to make you accept the premise.
Yeah, that's basically my reaction, the initial reaction that I had to it. Although I will say, I did not think about it nearly as much as you guys.
Yeah, well, I mean,
it was like I'm not saying it's bad for you to do that because I didn't think about it at all. So I'd rather hear an opinion of someone who did think about it than someone who didn't think at all.
Oh no, we're very comfortable in our level of overthinking.
Yeah,
we overthink all the things.
Me too. Normally, but what I'm trying to say is that like for me as someone who had already seen the series and I was really just here to see what was going to happen in Rebellion, which was the new stuff, I just didn't think that hard about it. And it was okay, I remember this part. I remember this part. Yeah.
And
that's new.
The movies were just made to push those buttons.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm thinking, this is kind of a theory that I'm, chewing on as we talk. So they toned down the level of, kind of badness and suggestion that there's a problem coming from Kyubey directly. What they did with Mami is by stripping her of her actual backstory, giving her titty socks, making her battle scene much more,
they
engaging
made her the
and
eye
graphic.
candy.
She's the eye candy, but she's also they tried to use her to tell the audience that being a magical girl is a mixed bag. There's a lot of content in the first few episodes that do that in subtle ways, like Kyubey and Shadow, or Mami's backstory, or all of these things that make you think, the Homer chasing down Kyubey and shooting him up and all this kind of nonsense.
Not to mention this harrowing and sullen dream sequence at the very beginning.
Yes. They take all of this out, but they also reframe Mami less as a kind of troubled wannabe
or somebody who is so
or whatever,
isolated and alone. They take all of
that away and frame her as the actual authority that has power and then murder her to let you know that it's bad. I can see why you would want to do that, if you're trying to rush through the content, but I don't feel like it works, because while they did that, they also gave her titty socks and made it eye candy, so any messaging that would tell you that this is actually a bad thing
is lost.
It's kind of lost because you're titty socks. You just lose a lot of the force of it, and I feel like that's
Mami really becomes the eye candy, and it really, really fucks with her character.
And they do a similar thing with Sayaka. Because you've watched the series, and the movie premise is that you've watched the series relies heavily on that to its
detriment.
Yeah, they do a lot of reframing Sayaka early on to suggest that she's going to fall. Putting her face in shadow, her, some of the redubbing, because they re-record some of the voices, I think. She's much more, aggressive and angry and stuff like that. But in doing that, they also removed a lot of the context around her belief that she should be doing good, and
basically all of that was gone.
They cut all of that. It's just she goes nuts, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I'm incredibly mad about with this movie is they cut everything that makes Kyoko and Sakura a meaningful Sayaka. Yeah. Everything that makes Kyoko and Sayaka a meaningful fucking pair. They cut everything that makes them opposing forces that would naturally have to conflict, and it just ends up in them having conflicts over and over for literally no reason other than the other one is there. And I hate them for some reason.
You know what I keep thinking of? In the show, when you have that sequence with the parents in the bar, and, it's a picture of,
the mom and the teacher.
Yeah, the mom and the teacher, and it's, creation, and on the one side is red, and the other side is blue. I remember when I saw that in the show, having it be very striking, because at that point you had so thoroughly established that they were opposing forces that wanted to come together and make sense of each other. That emotional moment is gone. You still see that scene, but you don't really feel anything about it.
The emotional weight is completely just dissolved by the fact that there's nothing.
They genuinely murder these two characters.
And Sayaka.
Actually, 3. I think they murder all 3 of the sub-characters in the movies. They change the scene where Sayaka loses her mind because of the guys in the thing.
They shortened it.
And they actually changed the visual effect of it, and I disliked it.
Okay. I'm going through our notes here, and we're like going so far ahead.
Oh yeah, we're skipping around because we're just jumping from mad to mad.
Okay. So,
I wanted to bring up the scene where right after Mommy dies, where they're on the roof.
Yes.
And you guys have this note that says, "Finally, like a quiet moment."
Yes.
Like finally a contemplative moment.
Yeah.
That tries to make all of this seem important.
Well, it's not that it tries to make everything seem important, but it's important to have quiet moments where characters just reflect on their grief, or
you need that moment in the Nirvana song to make this work.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty much it's exactly like that. You need these quiet moments to be able to give any emotional weight, and basically the reason that quiet is there is so that the audience can see that this has an impact.
Yeah, this actually moves Madoka and makes her
does not it does not just disappear into the ether.
Yeah.
This is something that has an impact on these characters so much that you need a scene in the movie to take time and process that.
Yeah.
The fact that, because we assume all kinds of shit happens off camera.
Right.
Like, we assume that Madoka is going to school, and she's brushing her teeth every morning, and she's talking to her mom, and all that kind of thing. We assume that all of that happens. Grief over Mommy should not be one of those background things that we assume happens.
You need to see that.
Absolutely.
You need to see that it actually, matters. And this all happens, at the cost of Madoka's arc, because she's seeing less suffering that you see with her.
Yeah.
And, the rooftop scene becomes, because there's been no build-up to the roof. I love that scene, but there's not enough build-up to it, and it becomes very tell instead of show. You're told that Madoka is fucked up about this. You're told Sayaka's got these emotions and conflicts about it, but you're not shown it. You don't get those moments where, big example. And I think it happens around this point. They took out the shot where Homura is taking the lid off of the coffin.
Yes. Yeah, they took that out.
That's a reference to
the allusion to decapitation.
Mommy being beheaded.
They took that out. Why would you take that out?
Yeah.
That was such a great...
That was a classic.
Yeah. That was one of my favorite things in the show because it was so sinister and creepy. But when you look back on it, it's Homura being, forcing herself to be indifferent because she has to.
Mm-hmm.
In the movies, that kind of content is taken away, so you don't know why Homura is acting the way she is. But, scenes like that got taken out. The rooftop scene is I think it's still pretty similar to the show that I remember.
Yeah.
They souped up the backgrounds and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because they could, I guess. But
this is basically the riced out shitty version.
Yeah, it's riced up but not better.
Yeah.
I love this comment you guys have here. I think this is Yasha typing.
Yes, all of it is me.
Okay, Amanda, I'm gonna predict the reason you hate Rebellion is because it follows from the movies, not the show, and these movies take out everything that makes Kyubey into a villain and Homura sympathetic. Calling it now, you hate Rebellion because the Homura in these movies would turn bad. She is actually positioned that way from the beginning. We will see how accurate I am.
Yes. That was written before we watched Rebellion, so
pretty accurate. Although
take.
We're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, you know what? I do think that's pretty accurate because the Homura in these movies is not the same Homura as in the show.
They take out just enough character building moments that it changes how the audience is meant to perceive her. Yeah. So because we don't see Mommy's backstory, it doesn't really make sense for Madoka to be as upset as she is about her dying.
No.
It doesn't make sense for no one to answer the door because the audience doesn't know that she's an orphan. It doesn't make sense for Madoka to be she fought so long by herself because, again, the audience doesn't know.
Not been given
everything that Mommy was associated with or everything that the characters say about her is completely coming out of nowhere.
And the problem with that is, among other things, Mommy was used to help you learn the mechanics of the world.
Didn't you say she didn't say that the grief seeds cleanse
in the movie? There's no clear point of information that tells you how the grief seeds work, or that you need to purify your gem. That those scenes aren't there. So when Sayaka's gem starts getting all fucked up, you don't understand what that means from the context of the movie. You're using the context of the show because you know what happens,
right?
But they remove a lot of the critical information because they know you know it, but that doesn't... It's to its detriment instead of to its benefit. Like, if you're going to use the show and rely on the show to reframe it, this is not the way to do it. Because I don't mind that. That's not bad.
Right back to, why was this movie made?
Yeah.
Why would you make this movie if...
It wants to say something different.
Does it?
Yes.
Does it?
All it wants to do is prepare you for rebellion and justify the presence of rebellion better. The problem with that is it didn't need to, one. Mm-hmm. And two, I don't think that the reframing benefits any of these characters or stories.
Anything.
Like, I'm gonna just use the example because Oscar needs food.
Yes.
We need to feed Oscar or Oscar will die, so we need to reference Utena.
The new Utena musicals heavily rely on the fact that you've seen the show. Like, you could watch it without the show, but you would be so fucking lost and you'd miss so much of the context.
Actually, that's not entirely true.
I think for the second one, you'd be fucked.
Okay, we have shown somebody the first musical and they followed along just fine.
Yeah, but it's still like, there's a lot of detail and it uses your knowledge of the show almost against you.
Yeah.
Like, and that's kind of the way that the musicals do it is, they use the knowledge you have of the show against you, and sometimes they subvert it, and sometimes they don't, and sometimes they, like, leave it as an ambient, like, you know that's there, but we're only suggesting it, fuck you. Like, they play with it, and it becomes a different story, and it becomes kind of slightly reframed and interesting in the sense of, like, you're picking at it and trying to figure out how it changes. I feel like they wanted to do this here, because they do rely on the knowledge you have of the show, but instead of like playing with those concepts and subverting them and developing them and reframing them, it's just, oh, you know what the soul gems work, how it works, so we're not going to bother to tell you. Instead of like maybe making the soul gems slightly different or reframing them as a different sort of thing.
Exactly.
Like, if you're going to do a recap story, what's the point unless you're going to reframe it in a way that's interesting and says something new? Whatever they were trying to say that was new in these movies, I don't think benefited the story. Like, they're preparing you for rebellion. They're preparing you for this arc of
buying mommy titty figures.
Yeah. and it's totally cynical. It's totally cynical. This is all framed as here, buy this. And I mean, fine, I get it. They're fine. Money. I understand in that sense, but there is still very much the cynicism around it, and I don't think that the movies actually were sincerely trying to do anything new with the content the way that I thought the musicals did. It's literally just, we need to reframe this enough to justify having new character designs on new titty figures that we can sell, and there's a new hair clip on Sayaka, so we can sell new versions of the buttons.
Yeah.
Like, it's so cynical in that way that, and Evangelion does the same thing when it does its like review.
But Evangelion acknowledges its own cynicism within the movie, and that's admirable.
So I do enjoy that. It is like, fuck you, but you're gonna buy these figures, fuck you. Yeah. This is way more sincere in the sense of like, you want titty figures, and we're going to make these two movies that justify the existence of these titty figures, but we're not really doing this for any better reason. And that kind of sucks, because there was so much in Madoka, like the original show, that I felt was emotionally sincere and interesting and saying something new.
Yep.
And I guess those 30 minutes that they took out were that content, because this just feels like...
It's extremely hollow. It feels like characters going through the motions of the plot.
It's rushed.
It's rushed. It's rushed, and you know what it is? Like, we've talked about wanting to see shows that developed from the genre that Madoka kind of... I wouldn't say started, but justified. We do.
Some of our friends have
suggested a few.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like they took the dark, grim, dark, magical girl genre that Madoka implied and basically, like, justified it in the movie. Like, this is like the shitty, like, if you watch just the movie, this would just be a shitty, grim, dark, magical girl anime, and it sucks because it's premised on the one that worked, Yeah, just it doesn't work on its own.
So what
Right.
I'm saying is actually the first shitty Grimdark spinoff
Was
the
Madoka.
movie.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
they were their
true.
first spin-off.
True.
The Ouroboros is eating its tail.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. They fucked themselves. Which is sad.
Okay, hold on. So let's move on here in the story.
Okay.
So I guess we're moving on now to what I like to refer to as the Kyoko and Sayaka like mini
Yes.
subplot. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very mini now.
Yeah.
Very, very mini.
Very, very mini.
Literally, they cut out everything that makes the characters... Like, Sayaka, I think, talks about justice and all of that being her goal literally once.
Yeah.
And it comes out of nowhere. And it doesn't attach to anything, really. So she just kind of mentions it, and it doesn't do anything to change her character or inform us.
So another thing that they changed in the movies that becomes, I think, super relevant here is they changed some of the music, like the background music and stuff
Okay.
like that. A couple
There are
times
some
I
points
thought
where
this
that
was better.
really doesn't work anyway.
There was a couple times where that was better, and they kind of beefed up the music, and it was kind of like, oh, this is cool. Kind of similar to how they beefed up the backgrounds. They're
Okay.
like, okay, this is
I'm going
cool.
to take a stand right now. The version of, what's it, Mommy's theme.
Yes. I can't remember the name of it.
It's Justitia, I don't remember.
Whatever.
They beef it up.
They change it so that it has Japanese lyrics.
Yeah.
And in every review that I've seen, people are like, oh, it's so beautiful. No, actually,
No,
it sucks.
I liked it better.
It actually sucks in a way that, like, 4Kids dubs suck. Why would you change it? Like, why would you take a song that has its own, like, that's what it reminds me of, is just old, shitty anime dubs where they used to dub the opening songs in English.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yes.
Amanda, do you remember?
Yes. She's a Sailor Moon fan.
You remember the English version of the Rurouni Kenshin opening theme?
Yes!
Oh
my
my
god,
God.
that's
So
the one
it's
I was
so
thinking of.
Ow.
That's
Okay,
the one I
no,
was thinking
that
of.
hurts. I can't handle that.
But yeah, no,
But yeah, so they changed Mommy's stuff, but I think it gets the worst change is like they changed the music where Sayaka turns into a witch.
Yes.
Into this like super operatic, extra, over the top, and it sucks because you didn't get a build up to that kind of tension.
So
and it feels
it's like,
so,
why?
like much. It's so much, and it doesn't work.
It's like, why? Just why?
Why would you add this operatic like? It's. Just...
I mean, like, okay. The thing is, mechanically, you can look back and see that Sayaka has performed certain actions within the plot, therefore she must be an important character and justify this operatic music.
Yeah.
But that's not satisfying to a real human person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was almost fun to like jump around and see like the main sequences, like when she transforms into witch. It looks really cool. It's souped up. The scene where she kind of like loses her shit banging on that other witch.
Ugh.
Like those scenes are made more riveting and more interesting, but because the context that leads up to them has been truncated, you don't feel as committed to them.
Right.
But yeah, my thing was they did change a lot of the music, and not always for the better, because they did the same thing with the music that they did with the visuals, where sometimes it's like, George Lucas, why did you add this? You didn't need this to be more dramatic. You had this really, like, some of the more quiet scenes they changed to more dramatic music, which sucks because now it all feels like everything's dramatic and you forget these are
You need the quiet
14-year-old
moments.
girls.
You need the quiet contemplative moments to make the
You
the
do,
louder
because
moments more
otherwise the other moments mean nothing.
Yeah.
Like, that action, like, okay. Well, it's like in Rebellion, to be honest, by the time Homura and Mami were fighting, I was kind of lost. I'm like, yeah, this looks cool, but why is this happening?
Let's not get ahead of ourselves, because I have a
I
whole
know.
rant.
I'm sorry.
I have got a
sorry.
whole rant to give when we get to that in the Rebellion episode.
But we'll get to it.
Yeah.
All I was gonna say is that it's just like a lot of these sequences are completely unmoored from any kind of meaning that they were given in the series because they did not establish any kind of build up to them.
Yeah, Yasha, you have a note here about how the only thing in the fight scene with Kyoko and Sayaka in the alleyway, you write, the most important and meaningful thing happening here is Madoka wavering on being a magical girl.
Yeah.
And that's it.
And that's it. Like, the rest of it is background to that. And reducing what happens with Kyoko and Sayaka to background is just, like, that's completely... Oh, this movie just shortchanges any characters that aren't Madoka and Homura, and then it takes Homura and just, like, mutilates her. Like, it's ridiculous.
It's almost like it would have worked better if you had just cut Kyoko and Sayaka entirely.
I know, right?
Like, I think it would have worked better if they just never existed or were truncated to very, very minor characters. Because they end up spending the currency on it, and it's just, yeah.
Well, the thing is, the movie spends so much time on those things and doesn't actually have any kind of payoff for them, and they don't really inform the main plot all that much. Like, so it's kind of like, why did you even do this?
I feel like in the show there's a sense of, because you have the Kyoko and Sayaka arc, and you have, like, the Homura and Madoka arc, and the conflicts that happen between all of these characters kind of inform the decision that Madoka makes. And it gives, like, it's all these different philosophical viewpoints, because you have Sayaka's viewpoint, and you have Kyoko's viewpoint, and you have Homura's viewpoint, and none of them are right, because they're all severely flawed in one way or another, but combined you have a perspective that would inform Madoka's decision.
The philosophy student in me says that saying none of them are right is beside the point. There is nothing that is right.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. Like, it's,
yeah, I know.
Madoka needs to witness and experience all these different perspectives to get to the place where she makes her decision.
Yeah.
The movies truncate a lot of that content and take it for granted that you know it's going there.
And it looks like we might have got to a point that bothers me, which is Madoka's relationship with her mom. Like,
oh my god. They fucked it up so bad.
This conversation is significantly different. And I don't know if it's because the translation they're translating, it's different translations of the same scene, or if they actually change the dialogue. Yes. But I would need to go back and actually directly compare them to say whether it's that. But I feel like the content of this conversation is so different that I want to say they literally rewrote the conversation. Because Madoka's...
Well, the visuals
Madoka's mom says, do you want... Like, Madoka's explaining the problem. Like, you know, my friend is trying to do the right thing, but the more she does, the worse it gets, and I don't know what to do. And her mom has that suggestion, like, in anime, it's like, well, why don't you try making a mistake on purpose? And it could jostle her out of what's going on. And she might be mad at you at first, but in the end, she might realize that moment helped her get some clarity. Like, that's basically what she says. In the movie, either that question, I don't remember, but either that question is replaced or this question is added onto it. She asked this question, do you want to resolve it even if it's a messy resolution? Yeah. And then she says, you should try doing a mistake on purpose. She says, hindsight can teach you that the wrong thing was the best thing to do. And this, I don't know if it's an alteration or an elaboration, but something was changed here in this conversation. And this is, in my opinion, an important conversation to the original anime. And Mom ultimately asks her, is it better for you to abandon your friend or for your friend to just misunderstand what you're trying to do for her? Which again, is one of those things that plays, that's directly is meant to set up rebellion.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And it's, like, some of the visuals that they changed the scene, for example, like, and I remember commenting on this when we saw it. You know, Madoka's got the drink, and her mom's got the drink, and the drinks look very similar. Like, you know one is orange juice. Yeah. But there's kind of that implication of the experience of Madoka growing from the conversation because there's the alcohol there.
Exactly.
And I liked that comparison. And in the movie, they were like, hey, if you didn't notice that, we're going to make it easier for you to observe. Because the orange juice is, like, more orange, so it doesn't...
way more orange.
Yeah, like they wanted to make sure you knew it wasn't actually alcohol. Like, the end result of that scene feels much more like Madoka's childish. Mm-hmm. When in the show, I feel like the content of that scene and the conversation she has makes her grow, and that's why the fake alcohol is there, is like a symbol of her maturing from that conversation.
Well, and that's why it was important to not have the orange juice and the whiskey be
like, I don't think,
so
like,
different
what did that add?
in color. Like, differentiating them too much is basically setting the idea that this is not the same thing. Whereas making them more the same visually sets the idea that they are the same. So, like, in the series, whether she's actually drinking something with alcohol or not, visually what it looks like is that Madoka is having a drink with her mom.
Yeah.
And that's important because we process that as basically being, okay, Madoka is taking on more of the responsibilities and pains of being an adult.
And speaking to her mom like an equal.
Exactly.
And establishing that her mother is that kind of mother. Because
and all of this is coming from just the color of the juice.
Yeah, and the framing and...
Like, when you change that in the movie, you immediately make a separation between the two of them, and Madoka is immediately put on.
There's definitely going to be YouTube comments saying that we're way
because she's.
Oh, totally.
I don't give a fuck. Hey, look, overthinking is my job.
That's what we do.
That's my job.
But this is like part of like kind of an endemic problem that was in these. Yeah. Is you had an established visual language in the show that I fucking loved.
Yes.
The movies use that or abuse that in a way that's like, oh, you knew you had a symbol, but you didn't want it to be relevant anymore. An example is the chairs. The chairs are like a thing in the show,
I
and you're like,
noticed them in the movies. They don't really mean anything.
They added chairs in the Sayaka scenes with
Kyosuke. They added chairs, but the chairs really didn't.
But why did you put them there? Aside from like, hey guys, did you notice that we used chairs in the show? I thought.
Like, they weren't there for any reason.
Yeah, it's there to give the audience a hand job about symbolism, and it's like, but you didn't need that. You already did that with the first one.
Yeah, I already got my hand job.
I already got my hand job, so I don't need more of it. But, no, like, they just, it's over the top, and it's extra in the same way that the music is, in the same way that the visuals are. It removes a lot of the subtlety that I liked, and it makes it just more of a conventional...
Moving on to Kyoko and Sakura.
Sayaka, you mean?
What a disaster.
I have a mouthful of cereal right now.
I'm kind of thinking, like, we seem to be, instead of going, like, chronologically, we're kind of going by character.
So,
because I feel like that's probably a better context.
Maybe in that case we should talk about Kyoko next.
Yes. So, Kyoko's big upgrade is that she has different food. Like, you know, she's constantly eating, and they changed her snacks. And I don't know if this was, like, them being, like, branding, like, product placement
I do not know.
But she's got all these different, she's got all these different snacks. Everything about it was, like, completely unnecessary. Because they change her snacks. They make her backstory less impactful. I just feel like Kyoko's got nothing to do with the show.
Her backstory.
Yeah.
Because, what did you say? What did I say? Because we had an actual thing about this that was a conversation.
Even in the show, the backstory for Kyoko is a little less fleshed out in a way that I think was effective.
Kyoko using puppets to illustrate her past is cute, but it doesn't work here. It just looks childish and kind of ridiculous.
Because like in the like the backstory in the show is kind of like the super stylized, more like a Witch Labyrinth version of her father and all of this. And I loved how they framed that. I loved that it had that witch look to it, almost like this is the justification that's going to become Kyoko's fall. Blah 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 blah. In the movies, she's using. Puppets. It's clear that she's using puppets to display this, so it's almost like it's happening in real time instead of this imagined backstory. And it's a neat effect. Like, I think it would have worked really well for a different character, but I don't think it works
in
here.
Another movie.
To be fair, I'm pretty sure there's a very brief shot in the anime of her holding her family members as puppet characters. But you guys could be... I mean,
that's fine.
We're talking about stuff that's, like, very small changes that change the implication of scenes. So it's possible that they made that scene too long, or they cut out other things about it that changed the impact of that shot with the puppets. It's one of those things where I'd literally have to watch the two side by side.
No, you'd have to rewatch it again to actually
the framing,
see
though, I think, like, ultimately the way the framing is changed between the two. In the show, Kyoko's outlook on life and her backstory is established as something that makes her... It justifies her viewpoint, even though you may not agree with it, and Sayaka certainly does not. There's a justification of her viewpoint, and it makes her seem powerful. in a way that they also did with Mommy in the show, where it's like, okay, this is wrong, but it's empowering and
it humanizes
this
her
is her
in a
mission
really important
statement.
way. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
The movie kind of subtly changes this to make her seem more vulnerable because of her backstory and not empowered because of her backstory. And I think they do that with everybody.
Yeah, that's like a running thing. Is the backstories, if they're given at all,
are made to
things
seem
that
more fragile.
Cripple the characters. They don't make them stronger. They don't provide like a philosophy with which the character takes to heart and goes forward with it. They just cripple the characters.
So what they do, they're crippling the characters, the other magical girls in the movies, to better justify, and I think this is like the running theme, the movies better justify Madoka's decision. They make these other characters more weak and more fragile and more in need of saving, so that when Madoka saves them, it feels more impactful. But you do that at the cost of these characters.
Though, because you lose all of the...
Because Mommy now needs saving.
Characters.
Sayaka now needs saving. Kyoko seems now like she needs saving, instead of them actually having, if wrong, but still firm beliefs that work to an extent for them and are things you have to consider. The show establishes their perspectives as correct and lets you judge whether you agree or not. Like with Kyoko's backstory.
Yeah.
You see this backstory and you're like, that fucking makes sense. It's terrible, but I see why you think this way now. Cool. The show posits them as right and lets you decide whether you think that they're right or not. The movies kind of subtly change the framing so that it's framed as they are wrong. Like Sayaka's viewpoint is wrong. Kyoko's viewpoint is wrong. Mommy's viewpoint is wrong.
Yeah.
And it doesn't it changes
have
the way you
whole
feel.
jerk off when Madoka
this is making me want to rewatch these first two movies, even though I think they're actually pretty bland to watch.
Don't.
Well, just because I want to, this is interesting and I want to see where you guys are coming from, because it's making me want to be like, really? And like go back and watch it. Not because I don't believe you, but because I just didn't pick up on any of that.
Well, the thing is,
it's like we are totally nitpicking. Like, this is the most nitpicky. Like, here's the thing. I get that we're nitpicking a very.
If you can separate the movies from what you know of the series, then you'll see what we're talking about. If you cannot separate those two experiences, you're not going to see it.
Someone, from what I saw, because before we recorded, I kind of did like a quick Google of movies and found the Madoka subreddit, which is cursed and bad.
All respect to the people who
yike.
disagree with us over there, but I learned very quickly that I could not rely on that place for good discussion.
No respect. I'm sorry. This is me saying, this is not the position of the podcast at large. This is the position of Yasha herself, and only Yasha herself. But fuck all these people. Fuck them. They suck. I'm sorry.
But, okay, what I was getting at, anyway, is,
go on.
As apparently somebody did an edit of the movies where they reinserted content from the show.
Okay.
And I think that's interesting, and it betrays the understanding that the fandom has that these didn't work. Because if you feel like you needed to plug the series into it to make it work,
then you know that it doesn't work on its own.
It's kind of like the people who've made edits of Star Wars.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, Star Wars is one thing. Because I think everyone wanted to see... Yeah. Because the original versions of those movies are not available. So I think that might be a little bit different.
Yeah.
But this time, did the person do that because they thought it didn't work, or just like to see what would happen?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay, all right.
I don't really know. I just
it's
know
a little
that
bit different. It's a little bit different.
Yeah. It is different.
I come from the position that if somebody is moved to do that much work, then they must have some strong feelings.
And I feel like it would be interesting to see, because I don't think adding those scenes to this movie would actually work just because of what they changed in the movie.
Exactly, like the movie Cubing.
Well, it basically would refute the purpose of the movie's existing.
Yes. Which is like basically what that's implying, is that they shouldn't have existed here. We made a better version.
Yes.
And it's like, that's not a good look.
Nope.
It's kind of sad. But I do think like they did Kyoko especially dirty, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, they did everyone. Okay.
Mommy's the worst off.
Mommy is the worst off.
Like, that was
Mommy is the worst off. That's bullshit what they did to her.
Yeah. Kyoko's like,
she
exists, I guess. Kyoko literally exists in the movie to get all verklempt when Sayaka falls.
Yeah.
She's literally just there to freak out over that.
That's
like,
literally
that's
there's nothing,
how she's used.
There's nothing more to her character, really.
And then she dies, and then, we jump to the Homer backstory, and all of these characters just get kind of thrown off a cliff because nobody cares anymore. They do this coverage of the characters.
The movie right there.
Yeah, and then you get to, like, the Eternal one, and from there it's like, okay, now we're doing the actual story, and from there it's basically the show. Like, they didn't change nearly as much.
Yeah, I know.
In the last half.
They fucked my wife over.
Yes, they took away the parade scene.
They took
Okay,
away
hold
the
on.
parade.
We're getting way too far ahead.
But we're getting far ahead.
Sorry,
we're getting ahead.
No, this is a good, because I'm looking at the notes, and I remember this being a point of contention for you guys when we were talking about this, like, previously on Discord or whatever. Yeah. This fight against, what is the witch's name?
Octavia?
No, the black and white and red witch.
Oh, yeah, okay.
The one that...
The one where Sayaka's like, oh, you're right,
out.
If I don't... I can block out all the pain and be a psycho.
Explain that.
Yeah. I've heard this rant already, but please go ahead and explain it for the audience.
Oh, here we go. Okay, I found it in my notes. So
they took away a lot. They took away a lot of the scene where Kyubey and Sayaka are talking about the soul gem in her room, and it's like kind of dark and quiet. And it's when he, like, tortures her with the soul gem. But this is also the scene where he establishes that she could, because the body isn't her anymore, she can ignore pain.
Yeah.
Like, that's a detail that's planted in her head at that point.
It's positioned as a thing that has consequences.
Yes.
Yeah.
They don't include that, so when she's freaking out...
He even says out loud, like, it lowers your reaction time, so you might want to be careful with it.
Yeah. That information is given to you, but they don't do that in the movie, and they still have her freaking out and saying, oh my god, he was right, I don't feel any pain. And it's like, who? What are you talking about?
She doesn't say the he was right part.
I don't feel any pain.
She says the rest of it. Yeah. The I don't feel any pain.
And you're like, what? You don't, there's nothing in the movie to explain why that works that way. It's just,
it just kind of comes out of nowhere.
Totally comes out of nowhere.
Totally comes out of nowhere.
So does the tainting of the soul gem. Like, the conversation with her and Homura about your soul gem is getting all fucked and you need to take care of it gets changed or removed, I think, even.
No, there is no conversation.
Yeah.
Homura does not approach Sayaka.
No. So you never find out that Sayaka is deliberately, sabotaging herself.
Yeah.
It's almost, it's framed more like she doesn't know that's happening instead of she's deliberately doing that. I feel like they redid kind of Kyoko's reaction to be a lot more...
They redid a lot of the animation, and some of it really comes off very funny.
Yeah, like they tried to sell Kyoko's, like, rage more, but it doesn't really work. No. They refamed her reaction, like the zombie thing, and Sayaka's reaction to, like, the zombie thing as much worse, in the sense that instead of it being part of the way they view the world, it's just more things that make them weak. Like, Kyoko's reaction isn't, oh, this messes up my worldview and fuck you. It's more like, oh no, fuck me. There's less rage pointed at Kyubey, because we're making Kyubey more of a marshmallow, I guess. I guess that's what it is. They get angry about the zombie thing, but they don't blame it on Kyubey as much as they did in the show.
The whole thing where Kyubey touches Sayaka's soul gem and, like, basically tortures her to prove a point. That's depicted as a flashback.
That's truncated.
It is. That's right.
Yeah.
It's a flashback instead of something you're seeing in real time, which makes it a lot less powerful.
Yeah.
Actually, they do that to Sayaka becoming a magical girl, too.
Yes.
And I think it was a flashback in the show as well.
It was much more detailed. There was you had that weird tentacle thing.
It was in a different place. They didn't position it with what's his face being able to play the violin. I don't think.
They overlap the scenes the same way in the movie, but it's portrayed very differently, and, like, the sequence where because she speaks her wish.
Here's the thing.
They don't do
Here's
that.
the thing. The show is divided up into episodes. So the episode before that is the episode where Sayaka suddenly appears out of nowhere as a magical girl and saves Madoka from HN Ellie. And then the next episode opens with a flashback to Sayaka making her wish.
Yeah.
So it's more about filling in the gaps.
Yes.
You've got that break point in between that realization that she's become a magical girl and what actually happened. When you're watching a movie, it's just one just plays right after the other.
Yeah,
you know?
it's an interesting challenge, and I don't think they do it well here, but there is a challenge whenever you're taking a show and adapting it to a film. How do you deal with it being episodic and removing that? Because you have to remove that, otherwise the movie's going to feel super jumpy and weird. And this is an example of them not really doing it very well.
Yeah.
But they shortened that scene so much and took away the creepy stuff.
Yeah, they took away the creepy Kyubey's ear things reaching for her. Like, they were still doing it, but it wasn't this weird, creepy, I'm gonna
You know what it looked like?
you
So
thing.
like when you're talking about the alternate timelines at the end of the show, you have the alternate timeline where Kyubey's contracts with the magical girls are implied to be a lot more honest and less horrifying and stuff like that. And I feel like they changed this sequence to look more like that, so that you get more of a sense that this is not as bad as it looked in the show.
Right.
But I don't know if that was effective, and I'm guessing that this is the premise that this is the worlds Madoka created that led to rebellion, kind of it's a timeline jumping thing.
Yeah.
But it's another sequence that changes the context of how Kyubey tricks these girls into being magical girls. It just has a lot less. But she still does that. This is enough for me, which is. I feel like the delivery of that is less effective when you don't have all of that creepy ass buildup that basically implies she's been metaphorically raped.
Yeah, I mean,
bottom line, the movies are just inferior in every single way.
The break in between episodes there is critical for the pacing of the story.
I think so. I agree. Even if you're just watching them all at once, that break was very effective, and it's jarring not to have it. Yep, for sure.
So I don't know what the solution to that was, whether it was reorganizing the scenes or incorporating it some other way. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
But the way they did it, I don't know if it completely works. Yeah.
It's strange because I feel like there's so many things in the show that were subtle uses of framing and they didn't use any of that in the movie, and I'm kind of wondering if it's a different set of people. Was it the same directing and storyboarding and stuff as the show? Because I feel like this is the newbie version.
Well, so much of it is almost identical.
Yeah. They don't change much, but it still ends up feeling so...
who...
So
I want to know who was it that made the decision to change the things that actually got changed.
Yeah, who decided not to have Homura approach Sayaka about the soul gem?
Yeah.
Who thought that scene wasn't necessary?
That scene was completely necessary.
Yeah.
That fact that they cut it out is just, that's an insult.
It is. It reduces Homura's character a lot, actually. Because, it's about Sayaka,
it reduces Homura's character, it reduces Sayaka's character, that scene was pivotal for both of them.
Yeah.
Not necessarily for them in terms of changing, but for the audience in terms of seeing what kind of person Homura was, and what was going on with Sayaka. That scene should not have been cut.
No. It presented Homura as more jaded. She made this token effort to save Sayaka, and that was the scene.
Yeah.
And by then you kind of know she knows it's not going to work.
But she still made the effort.
Right.
Yeah.
Without that scene, you just get that Homura is just kind of crazy.
Exactly.
It makes her seem
without
less
that
stable.
scene, that scene establishes that Homura she's jaded and she doesn't think what she's doing is going to work, but she's going to do it anyway, just in case it does work, because she still has that little bit of hope.
And she's a rational actor, not someone that's slowly losing their mind.
And that's the whole point of her. She has to keep trying, even when she kind of knows that it's not going to do anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so they killed a scene that is basically the thesis of Homura's character, and was also in service of Sayaka.
Mm-hmm.
Homura being oh, well, your soul gem here, why don't we...
And then Sayaka responding to it, with so little value for her own life.
Yeah.
It was creepy because it was a foreshadowing of how willing she was to just abandon herself.
Yeah, to just give up. As soon as things started going wrong. Yeah.
Like, it was creepy because it was very much like the opposite of how Homura acted. Homura was someone that
refused,
against all odds, refused because she was like, I'm not letting this happen, and it's literally the opposite of what Sayaka does, where it's just like, this is hopeless, so I'm gonna go straight to it. Without that, you don't get that scene is how you sell the scene that I think comes later, where it's in the fountain is Homura and Madoka, and Homura's
because the Homura that we see in those two scenes seems to be a completely different person, and that's why that fountain scene is so powerful, because you're like, hold on, who is this Homura? Exactly. Yeah, this isn't the cold-hearted Homura we've seen so far. The Homura we've seen so far doesn't break down and cry.
Yeah. They took all of that out, so
they took
it's less
basically
jarring.
Any scene that showed Homura being a strong person.
Yeah,
they took it out.
They nerfed her.
They
totally nerfed her.
Yeah, Homura got nerfed.
Homura got nerfed because they felt like that was needed to justify what she does in Rebellion, which I think.
Yeah. Okay. So you have a comment here.
Anyway,
you have this is a little bit behind where we are now, but it says, Sigh, now we get the black and red and white Sayaka fight, but since the consequences of separating mind and body continue on through pain have never been alluded to, we don't, and then this is in caps, we don't know why Sayaka is going cray, and we don't know why there are consequences, and we don't care. Like, it's shot to look scary and all, but we have never been giving a rationale, so it just doesn't mean much. Yasha says,
it's kind of a shame because I love how the scene is done.
The composition is great.
But if you took that scene and plugged it into the show, I'd be like, this is great.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of funny because that could have been exactly what they could have done. Like, it's literally what they were kind of aiming for.
Mm-hmm.
But that is the level above what they did do.
Yeah, but I would have loved to see that scene in the show where it looked so much more impactful and everything, and it sold it better. But you still have to have the build up to that, or it does not work.
That brings us to the train scene.
That happened. So
you guys seem, in at least in your notes, you seem to be very disappointed in this scene.
Yes.
Yeah.
But just because it's shorter, because it takes away all of its impact.
I mean, the fact that it's shorter is not necessarily something that's to its detriment. Like, shortening it is not the problem. It's the fact that they basically shortened the meaning right out of it.
Yeah.
It doesn't come across as Sayaka seeing a pattern in the world and deciding that pattern makes the world not worth saving anymore.
Yeah, like
it comes across as Sayaka being overloaded and deciding, oh, well, I have too much to do, I'm going to kill these people, therefore I will have less to do. Kind of thing.
It makes it seem less rational.
Yeah.
Like, because I think everybody's had a similar experience where they've been sitting somewhere and they're listening to someone nearby just talk a bunch of bullshit. And there's that, it takes a while and you're just getting progressively more angry and eventually you want to, snap and murder this person because they keep saying that Trump is a good president.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah, or something.
Like, it's literally like that kind of thing where you're just sitting there and getting bombarded with hot takes until you want to murder them. Mm. And that scene is impactful because Sayaka does.
Yeah.
She finally, snaps, but it takes a while, and I liked that it took a while of hearing that shit.
Yeah.
For her to be like, I'm done. There's no saving this.
That's the thing, is the movie presents it as this is the last straw. This is the straw that broke the camel's back. Whereas the series presented it as Sayaka looking at what these guys were saying and seeing that this is a pattern that is omnipresent in society. That is something that she's never going to be able to get away from.
Yes.
This is something that permeates everything that she does, everything that she looks at, everything that she experiences is informed by and created from this pattern. Okay, this is taking
it's
it
externalizes her experience instead of having it being an internal experience.
Yeah, it's not just, this is the last straw. It's looking around at the world and going, holy shit, this entire world is made of the things that hurt me.
Yes, and this world is not worth saving, which becomes an important theme for Homer and Madoka later.
Yeah.
So, in the show, it's an external, like you said, she's looking around and deciding it's not worth it. In the movie, because it's shortened and made more, personal, it's her breaking down, and it's, her internally deciding this isn't worth doing and I hate it and I'm done.
Well, it's not even her deciding this isn't worth doing. It's just her being like, oh, well, I've been doing this for X amount of time and I haven't made any kind of difference.
I haven't made a difference.
Therefore will not make a difference. Therefore, I'm useless.
Therefore, I'll murder these assholes.
Yeah.
So, like, it changes the framing of why she does it, and I don't think it's nearly as effective. They also quite changed the visual, because, like, there was a very strange, like, black and white visual effect that they had in the show, and they changed it to something more like scratchy, and basically they just redid it in a way that I didn't think really helped it. They changed the angles, they changed like the high angle, low angle, you know, it was changed but not better. It was different but not better kind of thing, and I'm not really sure why they bothered to do it, because I feel like that sequence was
that's another thing where like I don't remember that exactly, so I'd have to go back and look at it next to each other. There's
quite a big, it's quite a drastic change, I think, and it changed a lot of, I think, what made Sayaka's decision make sense. The movie posits it more as her as an internal breakdown. And I think that's kind of what they're going for with the movie, is they took away a lot of the things that make her seem like a rational actor, and just make it like she's got some mental health issues and breaks down, and that's sort of how it went. But
that's the thing, like the whole meaning of the character was definitely not that in the series. The whole meaning of the character was looking around at the world and the systems that make up the world and realizing
it's
I can't
not worth
fight
saving.
this.
Yeah.
I can't fight this, and I don't know what to do about it, and either I can murder myself saving it, or I can just murder myself and everybody else who perpetuates it, so I'll go with the second.
Yeah, it doesn't really work, and
no.
And then it goes to the scene that we were talking about before with, like, the fountains, and changing the way that Kyubey is framed so that he's not as hateable.
Is there anything more about this scene that we haven't said yet?
Kyubey, they changed his body language in the movie to make him look more like a cat. Like, he, like, grooms himself more, and it's, like, more cute. They make him more cute. And then when he Homura shoots his body up, and because you've been framing him as so cute, it's so weird and jarring when he eats his old body.
Don't you think that
comes
could
out of, like,
intentional, though, in its own way?
I think maybe, but it's so out of nowhere, whereas in the show, you're like, yeah, that tracks. He's a creepy fucker.
I guess that's
You're not as surprised. Yeah. I feel like the movie kind of doesn't do that the same.
Well, like, I mean, if you have one instance of that kind of thing, it doesn't really tell you anything.
No. But
one instance is a mistake. 2 instances, okay, maybe you've got something going on there.
Oh yeah, and you were talking about like the importance of like breaks in the show,
right.
like having an impact. That scene where like Kyubey being called the incubator and explaining like the Maho Shoujo pun thing.
God.
Yeah.
At the end, like he, when he's looking down on the city and you realize that it's a pun.
Die right now.
Yeah, that does not work in the movie at all.
Nope,
because it's not a break in the story.
Right.
I feel like that worked as a break in the story, and in the movie it's just sort of like there. It's weird and it's jarring. It doesn't work at all.
It's not good.
It's
the incubator. Like, who gives a shit?
Nobody cares. It does not work.
It doesn't work. At that point, no one gives a shit.
I mean, that basically closes out the first movie, right?
Yeah, it closes out the movie, but it ends up feeling very
Who cares?
Who cares? And at the end of the day, like, again, This was money. This was for money.
Yeah.
Like, they changed a lot of, like, they focused a lot on the soul gems becoming rings. Like, they added a lot of shots where it was clear that the soul gems could become rings, and I'm like, oh, so you can sell rings. Like, it's very, like, I get it. I see what you did there.
Yeah.
I don't like it, but I get it. It's kind of, but yeah, it's, and that's the first movie.
Would you,
I don't think
so
it
this
worked.
part of your notes that I'm highlighting, would you go ahead and read that for us?
Yep.
To summarize.
Anyway, to sum up, fuck this movie.
If I had seen this first, I would not have liked Madoka. I can't figure out why this was made, like, at all. If they wanted new viewers, why would they cut out half the context and make everything so dependent on seeing the show? If they wanted to entertain old viewers, why just retell the story? For half an hour more, I could have watched the episodes of the show and just done that. I can't figure out why this was made. It was a cash grab. I mean, in my opinion. It was a cash grab, and it was a setup for Rebellion, which is a thing I don't think Urobuchi wanted to make.
Yeah.
Which is why there's so much cynicism
like, presuming
around this, in
what
my opinion.
he did or wanted to do or any of that, like, that's
We never know.
There's
nothing we can.
I'm basing my opinion here on the context and just what I've heard of him.
But the thing got made, so let's look at the thing.
And it exists, so it happened.
Yeah.
The second one, honestly, is a lot. I don't want to say better.
You know what? Okay, no.
This is hold on. This has gone on so long that we might want to save our movie 2 discussion for the beginning of Rebellion.
Okay.
But I would agree.
Because there's really actually not much.
I honestly would agree that the second movie really has fewer problems. Just because it's basically the same.
Yeah, no, they lifted most of it from the series, so
it's pretty direct. The big change that we got pissed off about was like removing that parade shot that I thought was so amazing.
Yeah,
where she's walking through to
save it.
Yes.
Yeah, we're up on 2 hours now of ranting.
Yeah.
All right,
so
go.
This is like good filler. Like, oh, you thought we weren't gonna just bitch about this for 2 hours? Check this out.
You were like,
so wait,
hey,
does this mean I have free license to complain about Rebellion for 2 hours?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Hey, I want to hear all the takes.
I'm gonna disagree with you on whatever I think
of course
needs to be disagreed with, but absolutely, for 2 hours, talk about Rebellion.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
I'm actually really excited to hear how you viewed Rebellion and how you disliked it. I need to rewatch it, honestly, because it's kind of hard to really soak it in when you're streaming.
When there's the chat going on.
Yeah,
really
But I am going to rewatch it. My impression, initially wasn't bad, but I definitely want to hear what you have to say about it, because I feel like,
Okay.
Yeah. I get it.
Alright, so thank you for listening to Madoka Magicast. You can follow the show on Twitter at Madoka Magicast on Twitter and on Tumblr. You can follow me on Twitter at Lambda Power. Lambda like the Greek letter, spelled out, and then power.
And you can find us online at ohtori.nu. That's our website, which we are always moving and changing and doing things
for some reason. A website that exists.
And we're on Twitter at OHTORI_NU. And I'm just gonna say now, don't follow us if you're one of those review people. Aww. That's like, this is completely tight and I like the Madoka movies, because you're not gonna get anything out of our Twitter if you're that person.
Counter argument. So. Please, if you're willing to come on the show and defend your position, please send us an email.
I would love to hear it.
If you're willing to come on the show and defend your position in front of me.
Yeah,
then yes.
I've said this from the beginning, I don't want this to be the kind of show that isn't welcoming to people who disagree with us. But I do want anyone who's willing to chip in to know that we're probably going to argue with you. So I hope that you are confident in your position enough to feel comfortable doing that. Yeah.
And I would love to hear
argue.
that. So
I'm an argue elemental.
But it is. I don't think any of these things benefit from not having a couple different opinions.
Well, yeah. And I get the thing is the more
arguments are fun.
You find stuff. The more you investigate something like it, the more it means. That's the whole point of engaging with media.
Yep.
As far as I'm concerned,
I agree. And I think Madoka's great for that, so I would love to hear. That's why I'm looking forward to the Rebellion one, because I think we're going to disagree on some things. And great.
But that'll be fun. Yep, and that'll be fine.
Okay,
because we're not Redditors, so it won't get divulged.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, next time.
All right.
Anyway. Next time on Madoka Magica, we will talk about, probably briefly, movie 2, and then it will be our discussion of Rebellion.
Dun, dun, dun. Maybe a two-part.
Let's try to not be drunk for it this time.
Are you sure? Are you sure that's a good idea?
Yeah. I feel like you can tell when I've had a few drinks on the show, and I don't like that.
Well, yeah. But
it's pretty obvious.
Are you sure that that's a good idea?
I don't know. Maybe I'll think about it.
We'll think about it.
All right. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye!